conversations about headless architecture are very important these days. They're going to define what analytics will look like, but it's important for everybody else to get on the same page. What do we really mean by headless? A lot of the narrative today is, hey, AI is generating dashboards. Let's let them take care of that, but we bring everything else to the table. And it's a little bit more complex than that.
This key tenet of headless is the ability to pick and choose a swim lane and get the best in class for each component. In a composable AI native future, are the analytics vendors going to get out of the way and let me bring my own best in class unit, or are they going to continue to, try to be a one-stop shop Swiss Army knife for everybody? I need that ability to bring my best in class piece for this and then use the monolith for everything else.
Let's make sense of this.
Let's make sense.
Sensemakers.
Hey, Stefan.
Hey, Keith, good to see you.
I've got something to talk to you about because you've got this blog post out this week that leads with kind of an opening provocation that says a lot of the industry talk these days about this concept of headless BI is misguided or sales oriented and perhaps not necessarily aligned with the true architecture of what it means to really enable headless BI.
The conversations about headless architecture are very important these days. They're going to define what analytics will look like, but it's important for everybody else to get on the same page. What do we really mean by headless?
Right. And I read your post, and one of the things that you're calling out is the industry is populated these days by, big players that have monolithic platforms that have, constructed a moat around that monolithic platform for the last couple of decades. And maybe they're co-opting the term headless BI as a marketing term in this sort of effort to preserve their platform as opposed to your thesis about what a headless architecture really looks like?
Correct. Well, the message is definitely not complete. A lot of the narrative today is, hey, AI is generating dashboards. Let's let them take care of that, but we bring everything else to the table. And it's a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes a fear-based narrative to say, hey, if you don't keep our monolithic platform, your governance is going to go to poop, right? If you don't keep our monolithic platform, then it's the thing that's here to protect you. So what is headless BI then, from an architectural perspective? Like, where are you coming from with your thesis to say that message may not be complete?
Sure. Well, I would like to share my screen. This is a traditional architecture. A lot of the applications you interact with today are built this way. And another way to describe it is a monolith. You'll notice that it has a back end plus a front end, and then it goes to a channel. Back then, this is kind of funny. They don't have phones. So this is the 90s stack.
Right. And then you have to kind of enable mobile, and mobile becomes another channel, but you've still got this really tightly coupled back end that itself is producing the front end material. And then that tightly coupled back end is just dishing out the front end material, maybe to a desktop, maybe to a mobile.
Exactly. The best reference for this architecture is WordPress. If you've ever built a website with WordPress, I will describe it if you haven't, but the premise is that you log in to an application that has like an admin portal and various places where you can organize the pages in your website, maybe write the blog post, but it gives you a nice editor to do so. Kind of like having your own Microsoft Word for writing online blogs. And it's a great system, but this is kind of foreshadowing what happened later on, is that we had more channels, more devices, mobile, iPads. The companies who were really sophisticated ended up deciding that it would be good to have one team do the back end and a different team do the front end. and they will talk to each other via an API, which is more like a data contract. What kind of data goes in and out from both of these systems? This allowed for the front end to be built with something like React, and we get amazing looking UIs. We get something that is personalized for mobile versus desktop.
Got it. And so then from an analytics perspective, those API endpoints become the enforcers of that data contract. But even that paradigm is somewhat in the past. And so now headless is emerging as the next step in the evolution.
That paradigm is somewhat in the past. You're right, because in the traditional mode, the backend was getting data from the database, with that information generating the HTML that you saw on the web page, and it was all one backend. Here, there's two technologies talking to each other via contract, but the vendor is still pretty much building the front end for you. It's still their React app. Now, what Headless is really saying, and there was so much resistance to Headless because there's so much money and control if you're a big platform to control the front end, because that's the only way users could interact with your service. So there was all this resistance to Headless, but now that agents are in the game, you just can't say no to it anymore. And the design is, hey, you're good at data, you're good at whatever you do. Give me that nice back-end service that I need, but I want to be in control of what I do on my end, how that looks like, what kind of workflows I'm building. So there's no more front end. The vendor really shouldn't really be worrying about that anymore.
Right. And so I think some of the framing that's coming out is that if you go headless, what it means is just, for example, with Tableau, just take the dashboards out of Tableau and keep the monolithic platform in the background, and that's headless.
And exactly, that's headless. Now, what is the ironic part of this conversation is that it's not fully headless, or it's headless where it matters, but there's still some gaps. What I mean by that is that Tableau is essentially still a monolith in 90% of the way the application has been designed and the way it works today. But now we have a few APIs, especially the data query APIs, that enable that use case where, okay, you're building your own charts with an agent. That would want to be one of the main takeaways I'd like to share with people watching this video today is you need to be aware of what a monolith looks like, what having a lot of APIs look like, and what truly headless architecture looks like.
Right. So tell me about that. Architecturally, what is then, because the premise of your blog post is that true headless is the decomposition of the entire stack. It's saying, Mr. Benioff, tear down those walls, yes. as Sean wrote in his recent newsletter, and tear down that monolithic stack and help me to decompose it into the best of class at every layer. So I've got best in class authentication. I've got best in class security. I've got best in class observability. I've got best in class backend. That decomposition of the stack is the true meaning of headless?
That is the true ultimate meaning, and what you should be aiming for as a leader in your organization or somebody who has responsibility for the overall strategy. Let me show you some examples. If you haven't heard of Stripe yet, you're watching this video, this is the #1 platform for payments. If you are trying to incorporate automatic payments into your application, having users sign up and pay with a credit card, then so many companies rely on Stripe. They were first, but they also built a fantastic developer platform, and this is the Stripe API docs. This is a reference industry-wide. Everybody looks at their work and says, wow, I wish my developer docs were this good. And honestly, they've gotten better since last time I checked, because we have buttons here to copy this section as a markdown or view it as markdown. You can tell this is designed for agents.
Right. And you said last week when we spoke, coming out of the Tableau conference, that the developer experience is the agent experience.
It ultimately is the agent experience. That's what is so important to be aware of. Exactly. Because people have been pushing for, hey, give us better APIs, give more love to devs for a long time. We just have a new term for this stuff today.
Right. But I mean, if I was to take sort of the counter argument to what you're putting forward, Stefan, is you're saying, And I agree with this, that the real strategic decision for a data leader is, am I going to stick with the monolith, or am I going to decompose some or all, components of my stack and get into orchestrating and arranging them in a composable fashion myself, right? So if that's the strategic question, I don't necessarily know that it's exactly the case that everybody needs to go to full decomposition, because there's going to be value, there's going to be reasons why sticking with the monolith might be useful. So for example, data maturity, in-house engineering maturity. I think a lot of enterprises and a lot of organizations just don't necessarily have the chops, if we can be honest, to fully take control over decomposing their entire analytic stack and arranging them in a truly code first, observable, integrated way. And so many organizations might want to stick with the monolithic stack because it just makes their life easier, and they don't have it in them to decompose the whole thing by themselves.
Very good argument. And that will be a huge factor, probably the main factor for a while moving forward. I don't necessarily expect all these companies to adopt this way of doing things right away. What I do know for sure, though, is that if you lay the foundations today, and yourself or other people on your team are have the expertise in this area, then you're setting yourself up for success the more and more of these agents get better at what they're doing.
Right. And I think what you're saying really is that the moat that was constructed around these monoliths in the past was the challenge and the difficulty of the full stack integration if an organization was going to do it all by themselves. And now code is cheap and agents are doing the work, and it's becoming increasingly less difficult to do that kind of self-composed stack. And so you're just looking out years into the future and saying, maybe we're going to keep the monolithic stack right now, pick and choose our use cases, and begin to identify which and when and where are the pieces that we want to take control over things ourselves.
Exactly. I'm trying to hold back a little bit because I do have an eye for what would I do if I was running Tableau. So I have a little bit of a few suggestions to save until the end. But
right.
yeah.
Right. And I think the other thing that you're saying, if you were speaking directly to the Tableau product leaders, would be, hey, if you're going to go this headless BI route, especially with your marketing, let's back it up with what it looks like from a developer experience and an agentic experience, to have those docs and that kind of data layer contract be available in an API first world, so that those who do want to take the headless route and use the Tableau monolith as the governance plane and the analytic runtime for their enterprise, because that makes sense for them, they're going to need that developer agent experience to be really top notch.
To be top notch. That's what you got to be building for today. Agreed. Now, other companies that are doing very well in this headless world include an organization called WorkOS. And these are companies, WorkOS is being invited to present at all sorts of AI conventions. They sponsor AI Engineer, so they have a lot of AI companies using their tooling, but really they're so popular right now. And the thing is that they don't care if you're building an app and your database is something, your front end is something, your back end is something. They do one thing very good and so well that their focus is authentication and SSO, especially for the enterprise. So this is an organization that said, okay, with this new architecture, should I try to do a little bit of everything, Swiss Army knife, but not be the best at any one of those things? Or should I completely specialize in one vertical and own it? When you do that, you're able to provide a very differentiated value. When I'm building an app and I use this service, it allows me to set up the authentication in the app once. But then if I were to onboard an enterprise customer, they have a really easy way to onboard their SSO, configure their SAML.
Got it. And so really this key tenet of headless is the ability to pick and choose a swim lane and get the best in class for each component.
get the best in class and see yourself as a building block more than the entire structure. So when you see yourself that way, you start to ask yourself, how could I be the best building block for this use case?
Got it. Okay. But so then another message that's really coming out of the marketing engine around the monolith that says, use me for headless, use me for your agentic runtime is governance, right? Like, and so I guess a key question that I would ask is governance a tool that you buy? Is it a product that you can purchase off of the shelf, or is it actually like a part of your workflow and really the way that you run your operation?
It is and isn't. You and I think we've talked about this before, but there's definitely a big cultural component to how governance ends up working in reality, de facto. But you can buy tools to help you enforce it, make it easier, make it convenient for people. That's where I think Tableau should probably put their focus in, because they do have a messaging that's out there saying, okay, use us for the data layer, not necessarily for the visualizations anymore. But I haven't really seen a lot of new work or features in the governance layer yet. And I have seen a lot of large deployments that suffer from it. Like they wish we had better observability, better way to know how people are using all of these assets. So I feel like the marketing message is disjointed from the actual technical reality. Are your governance features really that good?
Right. Is there a there?
Yeah. What is it there? Uh-huh. So, but I think there could be. I think if you spent the time and listened to especially some of these big Tableau deployments and see what they struggled with, you have much better access to real experience about what the agent world will look like when you have that times 100. Everybody's making their little experiments, but they're hitting your APIs all day.
Right. And I think this is actually a place where, Tableau's play can truly be really successful for them, because if many organizations don't have the chops to compose their own stack and successfully integrate the best in class of every layer, and they want to go with an all-in-one platform, imagine how difficult it is to try to do that and enforce the governance on top when you're doing everything yourself. And so, governance is challenging. Sean mentioned yesterday that governance is a word that makes anybody who's a non-data person, their eyes just glaze over. And nobody is really interested in it except for the people that are like truly in a pain point situation because it's not working. And most of the times it's not working. And so if there were like a one-stop shop that could make governance easy, I think that would be a quick sell, because it's so challenging if you want to do it yourself, especially if you're trying to do it yourself on top of a completely decomposed stack that you're constructing and you're organizing. That takes a real level of rigor and engineering chops that I think is hard to get.
It is. It is. And this other company I have here would be illustrative of that point. This company is called Resend. There's a few in this space, but their specialty is sending emails from your application. And because they specialize in this, it's a lot easier for you to make a very beautiful marketing oriented email with design and color. If you're familiar with the native Tableau subscriptions, they do the job, but they're not really that good to look at, or you can't really customize what you get. Now, why is this relevant? Well, in this new world, when you're setting the foundation for being able to pick and choose the better services, you do have the option of using a true email service for developers. Now, what does Tableau have to do? Is get out of the way. Kindly just make it easy for me to bring my own email service. I never looked at you or bought you for your subscriptions. That at max should maybe be a webhook or reach out to something that I configure that's going to send the real email. But so like there is the benefit. You have the monolith, right? So you're a user. You can configure a subscription with a few clicks and you're done. But then the use case of emailing people is so broad. You have people who want to do it professionally and to their customers and investors. That native subscription is not good enough. But is the monolith set up to kindly get out of the way when it needs to, or is it going to get in your way and you're going to have to hack and Frankenstein your way through getting a better experience out of it.
I just had the aha moment. That's it. That's the ticket, right? In a composable AI native future, are the analytics vendors going to get out of the way and let me bring my own best-in-class unit, or are they going to continue to, try to be a one-stop shop Swiss Army knife for everybody and flounder at this attempt to be indispensable when, really what's truly needed is circumstance by circumstance, landscape and environment by landscape and environment. I need that ability to bring my best-in-class piece for this and then use the monolith for everything else.
When you're locked into a monolith, it's hard for you to go above and beyond what it brings to you. And many of these features are just not the priority of the platform. They never will be.
Oh, man. Well, thank you, Stefan, for illuminating me on the true meaning of this word headless, because I think it's really easy to miss the signal for the noise if you're only listening to the marketing engines. And beneath the hood, like there's a whole architectural concept here that is paramount, I think, for the industry in the coming years. Is there anything else that you wanted to put in on this?
Yes, definitely. I think I was trying to demonstrate where Tableau could improve, but I think that they have a lot of value today. The go-to-market just doesn't match what they actually have in the technology side. And what I mean by that is you can look at the Tableau REST API and it's frankly huge. There's so many resources there, and these API docs look pretty good. Now, not necessarily the case for the entire API surface. We have a lot of resources like the metadata API built with, this isn't even a static framework. This seems to be just raw HTML. And you go through different services and they look exactly the same way. And this is just sloppy. It's just not a good look. If you're a developer and you've been building with APIs the entire life and you come see these docs, it looks like nobody really cares. So a few of these have been turned down, honestly. We go to this document API and it will say that it's community driven today. So honestly, not something that you should be relying on, as is support.
Okay, so I'm getting mixed messages because on the one hand, you're saying there's a huge swath of REST APIs that are available today that developers can take advantage of. And the marketing engine from Tableau isn't necessarily making that sufficiently known. And people who are wanting to integrate with Tableau, could do more things and they perhaps are just not aware of what's possible today. But then on the other hand, the docs and the developer experience, the agent experience is underwhelming and in some cases being, kind of under-supported.
Exactly. And it's a wasted resource in a way because you do have all of these interesting APIs. Here's another interesting one, the Hyper API. And these docs are a little bit better. They're more elevated. I mean, compared to Stripe, you don't have agent features like copy to markdown or an agent that you can ask questions to. But man, is it a huge improvement over the other sites. And it just does you a disservice to have all of these resources there that could help your go to market as a headless platform, and still nobody's really looking at it.
My key takeaway is that what's truly needed is a tighter integration between the architectural strategy and the direction that the industry is headed from a headless BI architecture standpoint, and the product strategy and the marketing strategy. Those things would benefit from coming together.
It reveals that there isn't a cohesive strategy behind it all.
It's not a unified experience. It's not a best-in-class experience. And it's not an experience that corresponds with a platform that is really championing itself as headless.
We are on the same page. Exactly.
We are now. Thank you for explaining it to me, Stefan. I really appreciate it. You've broadened my horizons, and I hope you've done the same for our audience. Let's come back. Let's keep these conversations going.
Let's make sense of this.
Let's make sense.